And Pogba leaves for McTominay! Magnificent! It's Moraes, he's done it again! He has fizzed that into the bottom corner. Vardy for Chowdhury. And set for Madison! He is one bright young thing! Alisson saw Salah running from his own half, so onside here, Mo Salah. Salah to settle it! In front of the Kop! There's no feeling like that feeling! And now you've got to believe them. You have got to believe them.
Hey guys, welcome to the all-new weekly Premier League podcast, covering everything from transfers, results, and all the latest news. I'll be joined every week by fellow football enthusiasts Peter and Angus as we chat through all things Premier League. Right, let's start with Arsenal, top of the alphabetical Premier League at least, for now. They brought in a couple of high-profile players, a couple of lesser-so players that they managed to get done before the end of last season. So they brought in Willian on a free from Chelsea. Pretty good business, in my opinion. And also Gabriel Magalhaes. God knows how you say his name, but he cost them 18 million and he's from Lille, I believe. And their third, I guess, major signing was Dani Ceballos back on loan. The only outgoing is Mkhitaryan, so I'd say, as far as I'm concerned, they've strengthened.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Willian's definitely a solid sign to come in. Pace down the wing, experience. It's something which, for years, Arsenal's been missing in my eyes. They've had some talented players, but they've never really had that grit to get them through and push them on. So hopefully that will help increase them, although possibly not too much. I think Cedric Soares, interesting signing at right back on the free transfer. Good backup, but there's all the links with Bellerin going away. I don't know if he'd be a great first choice right back for them. So, but on the whole, strengthen the defence, which is important for them. So I think, yeah, good movements. I think possibly they need another centre mid still to come in.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of you guys. I think they've strengthened really well. They've managed to hold on to their key players. And yeah, just brought in some good reinforcements, which they were definitely in need of. So it's overall looks like a pretty solid transfer window for them.
And how do you see Arteta's momentum carrying on into the season? Do you see them pushing on and really fighting back for that Champions League spot? Or do you think they're kind of stuck in that 5th and 6th spots that they haven't been able to get out of the last couple of seasons?
I think Champions League is probably still a bit of a push for them, just in terms of the quality of the other squads around them. It's a possibility, but I think they're probably more likely going to be aiming for a solid sort of 5th, 6th position. I mean, obviously they'll be aiming for higher, but I'm not sure that's necessarily achievable at the moment, just based on the other opposition around them.
I can see them at the start of the season coming in on a bit of a high, obviously winning the cup. See them doing well to begin with. Especially with Fulham first up, quite nice, easy fixture for them. So I think first few games, they could get on a good winning streak. But after that, I can see them, especially when it comes to around December time, obviously hardest time of the year. I think Arsenal have always been a bit fragile, and I think they'll have players cracking. Willian, who I believe will probably make a really good start to the season, but will he pick up injuries? I think he's quite light at his age. I don't see them pushing on for the top 4, but I think 6th, 7th, around that area, I think.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think somewhere just below the top 4. I think Arteta will definitely get them going early doors, but whether they can continue that beyond Christmas, like you said, it'll be interesting to see. Right, moving next on to Villa. Bit of a relegation struggle for them last season, stayed up thanks to some VAR shenanigans. A somewhat average transfer window for them. I guess the main news for them is that Jack Grealish has stayed after the many rumours that he was going to Man United, but it looks like he's staying put at least for now. I guess there's still a month left of the transfer window, so he could still pack his bags. But on top of that, they brought in Ollie Watkins on transfer record for them. 27 million, very good championship player. Whether he's got the gas in him to bring that into the Prem as well, be very interesting to see. Doesn't really seem like they're going to bring in too many other players. I think that's a big transfer for them. So, they've also brought in Matt Cash, I guess, the defensive player from Nottingham Forest. So they've reinforced. Whether they have enough reinforcements to avoid a repeat of last season will be interesting to see. What are your thoughts on their transfer business?
Ollie Watkins, I think, is a really interesting one, quite an exciting signing. A lot of money for a championship striker, though. A lot of money. Someone who's, yes, he's had a good couple of seasons now, but can he transfer that into the Premier League? We've seen in the past it can be really difficult. There's players like even last season we had Shea Adams. He scored a hatful whilst he was in Championship, came up to Premiership, really struggled, got going at the end, but I think his return was 4 goals for this season. Hopefully Ollie Watkins will do better. I think I quite like when I've watched him at Brentford, so hopefully he'll do well. But it's a big ask, and again they've obviously brought in Matty Cash at defence, but last season one of the worst in the league defensively. Is it enough? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they've got a strong enough midfield either. Not in the centre. Anyway, yeah, I think it might be a push for them.
Yeah, I think Ollie Watkins is potentially a great signing, but it's one of those that we just really won't know until probably a good 5-6 game weeks in, and then we'll really get a feel for how he's going to shape up against the Premier League defenders. I think a big boost for them really is keeping hold of Grealish. I think most people probably thought he was going to go elsewhere in the summer, so to still have him in the squad and around the squad going into the start of the new season is a massive boost for them. But I have to agree with Angus. I'm just not sure it's going to be enough for them. They were on the verge of going down last season, and as Matt, as you just alluded to, they stayed up effectively because of a dodgy sort of goal line technology fault. So I feel like they maybe needed to bring in a couple more than just 2 players to really give themselves a good chance this season.
Following on the Grealish part, I still don't think he'll be. Part of me, I don't see him being there come midway through at the end of the transfer window, because he could be a late jump from Man United. I can see them going for him, and even though he's a home club player, I can't see him refusing Man United. He would have to go, surely.
Yeah, if Grealish is on his way, then I think Villa are really going to struggle this season. So hopefully, for their sake, he sticks around at least till January. Moving down to the south coast, we've got Brighton. Brighton have always been surprising everyone, I guess. They've always fought above their pay grade a little bit. I think they've come into the Premier League and they've really established themselves now as one of those clubs who look pretty safe, probably safer than anyone really expected them to be. This summer, they've brought in a couple of players. One, I guess the high-profile one is Adam Lallana on a free from Liverpool, albeit probably past his best, but could offer them quite a lot if he starts games for them. Another bit of good business from them is Ben White, the Leeds defender from last season. He signed a new contract at the club, and I think he's going to be a mainstay in their defence. He looked real solid at Leeds last year, so yeah, I think they've made some good business there. But equally, they've let a lot of players go this summer, and I think players like Aaron Moy and Shane Duffy, players who are fairly established in their starting 11, are now gaps that they need to fill. So yeah, for me, not the best transfer window from Brighton, and it'll be very interesting to see how they get on, especially early doors with Lallana and some other injury-prone players.
Yeah, I think with Lallana, I always think he's just one of those players. For the last couple of years, he's been seen as one of those people a bit like sort of Jesse Lingard, that kind of, he's still a young player, he's still got potential. And then you look at how old he is, and actually he really is getting on now. In terms of sort of the ages of a lot of Premier League players, I think he's going to be a good signing for them. He's the kind of spark that they need, really. But as you said, Matt, they've let a huge number of players go, and when you do that, there's a danger that you take sort of that core sort of team spirit out, and the sort of camaraderie between the players potentially is not there anymore. It'll be really interesting to see how they get on in their first couple of games, to see sort of how they gel as a team early on.
Yeah, Adam Lallana's at 32 years old now. He's not getting any younger, so it'll be very interesting to see if he can pull the strings at that age.
Yeah, I agree with both of you, especially on Adam Lallana. He's coming in after 3 seasons, probably 3 seasons now, of being very hit and miss. We don't know what standard he's at these days. Yes, back a few years ago when he left Southampton, went to Liverpool, he was great. He was on the half turn, could use both feet, good at pressing, really talented player. But it's been years, and he's definitely going to be a bit of an unknown quantity. We don't know what's going to come from him. But that worry of his injuries is always going to be there. And can he last a full 90 minutes? Even when he was playing for Southampton, rarely did he play the full 90 minutes, especially for the first few seasons under Pochettino. And I'd be concerned if he could do it again for Brighton. And I am really worried about him. I can see them being a potential go down. And I don't see the season where they're going to get the goals from. So they are one of my tips to be definitely down there, struggling, battling away.
Okay, next up we have Burnley. Burnley, the team that have just signed a second-string goalkeeper in Will Norris. So probably one of the most underwhelming transfer windows in their recent history. Not that they are exactly renowned for having very exciting transfers. All we have really is that they've lost a couple of players that I guess you could argue were starters for them in Jeff Hendrick. Jeff Hendrick's a fairly, robust midfielder. I think he'll do well at Newcastle. And then they just released Joe Hart, who's oddly gone to Tottenham, keeps landing on his feet, that bloke. And then, Ben Gibson, I think, was a transfer they had a couple of years ago. It didn't quite work out. He's gone out on loan. So, for me, I think Burnley are one of those teams who have relied on their way of football for too long. I think they're starting to get found out by teams. And I don't think, they've really pushed on when they should have. I think, a couple of years ago they finished in the Europa League spots, got Europa League, but after that, very little happened. So they're too reliant on their defence, and if they are rumoured to be losing James Tarkowski, then that's a big hole that they're going to have to fill there. And then they've only really got Chris Wood up front to score them goals. So I think this could be a season of struggle for Burnley.
I could easily see Burnley being the next one to go. Yes, they've had years of solid results, and obviously Sean Dyche, quality manager, but surely they can't keep it up. He's a manager who's done a lot with that team with very little funds. But as you say, Will Norris, second choice goalkeeper, comes in. Few players out, especially Jeff Hendrick. I think that's a really key one for them to lose. And there's no talk, no room of any players coming in. And I think maybe this might be the one. This might be the season they start to struggle. It might not be the season they go down, but a little bit like when Stoke were in a similar vein, a battling team, a tricky team to go to. Teams started to work them out, see them out, and if they lose Tarkowski, that is a huge gap in our centre defence. One of the best, in my eyes, one of the best defenders in the league, great centre back, and it'll be a big loss. Doesn't look like anyone's in for Pope, which actually I think is a bit of a surprise. I think he could have been a quality signing for Chelsea. I don't really rate Kepa as much, and I think Pope could have been great first choice goalkeeper for them. So Burnley for me in danger, not very underwhelmed by their transfer window so far.
Yeah, I think you've both said it all really. I mean, there's not too much to sort of be positive about there if you're a Burnley fan. The only thing I would say is if there was one manager in the league that you would say could survive an underwhelming transfer window and get through a season with the tools he's got, Sean Dyche's probably the man to do it in the Premier League at the moment. But it's going to be a really tough ask for them without any sort of reinforcements and losing at least one of their key players already.
Now moving on to probably the busiest transfer window I can remember for the blue side of London, that's Chelsea. An absolutely crazy transfer window. I can't remember. I think Real Madrid had a similar one, maybe 2012, 2013, with this signed like 13 players, but nothing on this one for Chelsea. I mean, you've got Timo Werner, you've got Hakim Ziyech, you've got Ben Chilwell, Thiago Silva, and this week Kai Havertz, another huge signing. They spent over 200 million on players, and the board have properly backed Frank Lampard this summer, and I think he deserved it. I think he had a great first season in charge, and I think these players are only going to help. I mean, you've got some world-class talent there. You've got Timo Werner, a very established striker for international level, Champions League level. I think he's guaranteed to get them goals. And then you've got Kai Havertz, who's been lighting up the Bundesliga for about 2 years now. I think, this transfer business is unreal for Chelsea and the Premier League. I think watching Chelsea this year is going to be a completely different experience. And to be honest, I'm just really excited to see what they're going to play like. I think these players are game changers, and if they're going to be there and thereabouts, then they've got to sign players of this caliber, and that's exactly what they've done. So, I'm intrigued to see what you guys think of Chelsea.
Yeah, I think they've done amazingly. I think we all knew that at some stage, whether it was this transfer window or another come sort of soon, they were going to make some big signings. The transfer ban that they had, they've done really well to get through that without suffering particularly badly. Done well with the players they've had. A huge credit to Frank Lampard there for what he's done with that squad. But I mean, the reinforcements they've made and the players they've brought in, it's just sensational business for them. And I think as a a Premier League fan, it's exciting to see some of those names that have been people that are coming to the Premier League. Like Timo Werner, for example, is just someone that, he's really at his prime at the moment, and it's exciting to see someone making that move into the league that we all love and that we're going to be watching week in, week out. Even if you're not a fan of Chelsea, it's going to, as you said, Matt, it's going to be really interesting to see how they play and how they get on.
Yeah, definitely agree with both of you. It's an exciting time to be a Premier League fan, to have a team like Chelsea bringing in some of the world-class talent from all over the world. The last 10 years, a lot of the Spanish teams have been I say Spanish teams, Real Madrid and Barcelona have been hoovering up the talent across the whole of Europe. And it's really great to see the Premier League starting to all the top managers are here, and now we're getting a lot of the top talent. And I think it's only going to make it better, and it's going to be great to watch. My only concern for Chelsea is they have had this very talented youth group coming through, and all these, almost like a Galactico signings. We might put a stop to some of these lads coming through, like Tammy Abraham. Is he going to get much time up front with Timo Werner? He was starting to, I know, at the end of last season, starting to struggle, but I can't see him ever getting ahead of Timo Werner. Obviously, Hudson-Odoi, a couple of years ago, all the rage, all the talk, looked like he was going to go to Bayern Munich, stayed. Was he going to go? Was he going to come? But no, he's staying, but I think he's going to really struggle to get into that Chelsea side. And it's a shame to see such talents possibly get wasted. But at the same time, watching the talented players who have come in, it's going to be amazing to watch.
Yeah, totally agree. I think they might be missing a keeper. I think Kepa's been, he's been a bit of a liability in recent seasons. I think he's never really lived up to the expectation that they wanted from him. And they're linked with Mendy now from Rennes. So, I think that would be the last piece of the jigsaw for them. I think if they get a new keeper, I think they're going to be really set up for what could be a very special season for them. Right, let's go on to Palace then. What to say about Palace? I mean, the main thing about Palace every season now is that they kept hold of Wilfried Zaha. Every year he's rumoured away, every year he stays. So I don't know what they're paying him, but it must be a fairly substantial wage. And to partner him this season, they've gone and spent 20 million on, I guess, another similar player in Ebere Eze from QPR. I think he's a really exciting signing for them. Whether they need two players in the team that are very similar, you could argue maybe not, but maybe that's a contingency for Zaha leaving. But at the moment, they're very stacked with, attacking talent, especially today. They brought in Michy Batshuayi on a season-long loan from Chelsea. So I think, those front three players could really cause a lot of Premier League teams' defences trouble. They haven't sold anyone either. So I think for Palace, it's a season of consolidation. I guess I think they'll be looking to push up towards the top 10 as they've never really broken into. But with the team that they have, I just think they needed to probably bolster their ranks with some more signings than just those three. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Palace get on. I know Roy's notorious for playing such exciting football, so we'll see how Palace get on.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the signings. A bit underwhelming. Yeah, interesting. Got another winger like Zaha, but is that what they needed? In my eyes, probably not. Still got some talent in the middle of the park, so it's not too much worry in the centre mids, but it's a defence. Yes, they've been solid and they play boring football, but I always felt that they could be countered and hunted down. And then up front, bring in Michy, yeah, decent, but is he going to get them enough goals? Because obviously Benteke is not going to get them anytime soon. So they could be struggling again. And it's always brave to tip a Roy Hodgson side to go down, but I can't see them being much further ahead than the bottom 5 in the league.
Yeah, I think they're not going to do anything amazing this season. The one thing that I would maybe slightly disagree with on what you said, Matt, about Zaha. Yeah, for them, it's a good guy to hold on to. Historically, he's been great for them. But last season, 38 appearances, 4 goals and 3 assists is so underwhelming for a player of his quality. And I think it's something that if he doesn't step that up, I really can't see him getting a big move anywhere. There's not going to be any of the big teams looking at those stats and thinking that he's a player that they want to sign. We all know he's got potential, and we've seen what he can do on his day. But that's an alarming return for me for someone that's supposed to be their star player. 4 goals in 38 appearances from anyone that plays in a forward line is not a great return.
Yeah, maybe Zaha's missed the train on his big move away from Palace. I mean, that return on a scoring front is very poor from someone of his quality. And I don't know what was up with Palace towards the end of last season, but they couldn't buy a win. So if he's not going to get them goals, then you're having to look elsewhere, and it's going to be a real struggle for them, I think.
I also can't see them ever getting the type of money which is always bandied about for Zaha. I've often heard 60, 70, 80 million. And for me, he's just not that good. He's an exciting player to watch. He's great dribble. I love watching him. But is he in that league? I can't see it. In my mind, you're looking at maybe 30 million tops. In Crystal Palace, he means more to them than that. But I can't see any of the bigger clubs coming in and spending the type of money they're asking for. There's better players out there.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where he ends up. But at the moment, he stays put in South London, so we'll see. Moving on, we have probably the second best transfer window, in my opinion, in the blue side of Mersey, in Everton. I mean, Ancelotti there has really had a big say, and I guess the players he wants in this summer. They've spent big money on big names, and I think exactly what they needed after last season. Ancelotti coming in, I don't think he really managed to mould the team in the way he wanted. I think he got a couple of players playing better than they were before, in Calvert-Lewin, and I think Richarlison played well too. But I think these signings in James Rodriguez, the quality signings in Rodriguez, Allen, and Doucouré, I think that just makes their midfield like 10 times better than it was before. I think it's a huge upgrade. And I really do think with these transfers, I guess you could argue it's just the midfield, but I think that's been a long-term weakness for them. And it will be interesting to see just how successful Ancelotti can be with Everton.
Yes, definitely agree. James Rodriguez, always remember that 2012 World Cup, not 2016. When he came in, he was world class. In my eyes, should have won the player of the tournament. And it's a travesty that he didn't. That wonderful volley we all remember. Has his club career stood up quite to the same standard? No, not really. But he still had some great moments and still plays for some big clubs around the world. And I can see him really, hopefully, lighting up the Premier League. Something else a bit sadder is shame to see Leighton Baines is retired. Used to love him when I was younger, watching him banging free kicks, great left foot, really good penalties. It's a shame to see him retired, but he's deserved it. He's had a really good career. And it'd be interesting to see how Ancelotti slots them all into his team. Obviously, world class manager, up there, arguably in the top 3 managers in the league. And he has all the experience. If he can get that team going, obviously Everton have a pretty good fan base. It could be a really exciting season for them and their fans.
Yeah, definitely. There's the potential there for it to be a great season for them. It really, in my opinion, it's really going to come down to how those new signings fit into the team. If they hit the ground running and they perform the way we probably all expect them to perform, they could have a fantastic season. It feels for me almost like sort of the start of the next chapter of sort of Everton being that club that's pushing to be in the top 6. Obviously, they've got potentially a new stadium on the horizon, although I think that's actually confirmed, new stadium on the horizon at some stage. They've got good ownership, wealthy ownership. There's the potential for that club really to become one of the big teams in England now, I think.
Yeah, huge potential for Everton this season. I think a lot will depend on those signings and how well they bed in. But if Ancelotti is the man to back, then I think the board have done a great job doing that. Right, moving on to Fulham, newly promoted, obviously, back in the Premier League after a 1-year absence. Some low-key signings, not the busiest transfer window. I think they really needed to strengthen ahead of this season. I think last season, the season they came up, the before last, is something they really didn't do well enough. They brought in a lot of players for a lot of money, but none of them really found their feet in the Premier League, and that ultimately cost them their Premier League spot. I think a couple of the Southampton loanees or signings that they brought in are okay. Harrison Reed obviously did very well for them in the Championship, but I think it's very difficult to step up your game and be a week in, week out Premier League midfielder. So Harrison Reed's got to try and cement his place in the team. And then you've got Mario Lemina as well. He never really found his feet at Southampton, but he could well get some game time at Fulham, and that could see him kick on. Then you've got some notable outs in Alfie Mawson, a defender they spent a lot of money on 2 seasons ago before they got promoted to the Premier League. Well, he's now been loaned back to the Championship. with Bristol City. So yeah, it's been an interesting transfer window for Fulham. A lot will depend on how they adapt to the Premier League. They've obviously had that experience from 2 seasons ago where they weren't quite at it. I think Scott Parker will give them a lot of drive. Their fans, even if they're not in the stadium, they're great. And yeah, I think they are a Premier League team. They just need to show it this time.
I agree on the Southampton signings here. Harrison Reed showed himself in the Championship to be a very good centre mid. Could pass the ball, could keep the game moving, and very defensively, very solid. Could get across and cover a lot of ground in each game. Mario Lemina, talented player. There's no denying that. Very talented player. Has he got the will to play in the Premier League? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's got the grit for it either. If you went and watched his YouTube, like a YouTube clip of him, he looks world class. He can do tricks, he can go past players, he can do some great balls. But can he hack it in the Premier League? I'm not so sure. And then the rest, just nothing signings really. And then I worry if they've got enough Premiership experience to get them up. I think the Premier League it's a big step up from the Championship. And are they going to be ready? I just can't see it.
I think when you look at Fulham as a Premier League side, their last 2 seasons in the Premier League, they finished 19th most times with a really underwhelming points tally. The one thing that I thought really could have kept them up last time was Mitrovic. He's their leading goal scorer for the last 2 seasons. He is a fantastic striker. There's no denying that. And I think the last time they were in the Premier League, he was really unlucky not to score more goals than he did. I think if he can push on and perform this time, they've got potentially one of the best sort of strikers in really the bottom half of the table, and that could be the difference for them. But looking at the rest of their squad, I have to agree with Angus. There's a worrying lack of sort of real Premier League experience there that could be a real issue for them in terms of staying up this season.
Yeah, it's the experience to play out the games, and I agree with Mitrovic. Wonderful striker, powerful, strong, good finisher. Only worry, sometimes his temperament can get himself sent off. Like we saw early in the Leeds game when he was like 4 minutes he was sent off for elbowing someone, I think it was. He's got that danger to his side. He might lose his rag, might snap someone, might elbow someone, might lash out. And if things are going to be even trickier in the Premier League, it's possibly even more likely to happen. And the other thing is, we know in the past he has been prone to picking up the little knocks. And if he's not in their side, where are the goals coming from?
So after a long absence, Leeds are back in the Premier League now. I mean, I don't even know what to say about Leeds. They're just one of those teams who belong in the Premier League. I think they've been away for so long that people, have got used to them being in the Championship. But, they're no doubt a sleeping giant, and they've been away for too long. And, under Bielsa, I think they're going to be here for a while, to be honest. I don't see them going down the season. I think they've made some good signings in the summer. Reinforcements. They've not lost anyone. One of the few teams that have come up and not sold anyone. And I think their core is really important to Leeds. They have players who play a certain way. Bielsa will only sign players who bed into his philosophy. So he's obviously scouted these players that they brought in this summer very closely, knowing that they can play his style of football. And I think Rodrigo, who is their headline signing this summer, is going to be very important for them. I think he's proved himself on an international level. He's been scoring goals for Valencia, I believe it is, for a couple of seasons now. And that's a real big signing and a sign of intent for Leeds. And they brought in another defender as well, and Robin Cox. So, these 2 signings, they might not be all that noticeable from afar. I think people might glaze over them. But when you think about how thoroughly they must have been scouted for Bielsa to buy them, then, I think it's pretty good business. And Jack Harrison from Man City is another good addition. He was on loan there last year. So, this core group of players could well keep their spirits high. And I think they could well bring their form from the Championship into the Premier League. So it'll be very interesting to keep an eye on these this season.
Yeah, definitely. They're just watching them last season. They looked like a Premier League team in the Championship with the way they played, the pace of their game, the intensity, the tempo of it. They were really impressive to watch last year, and I can't see anything other than them doing really well in the Premier League this season. As you said, Matt, with their signings, it's hard to look at those signings and think they're not going to be good for the team. What we know about Bielsa is that he's so obsessive about statistics and the scouting and making sure that the players are right and they're the right fit for every position. And you've just got to trust that he's looked at those players, seen that they're the right people for that team, and decided that that's the way he's going to go. And I can't see them doing anything else but having a great season, to be honest.
Robin Koch, the German international centre back for 13 million, I think that's a great signing. Adds a bit more strength to their defence. Obviously, they've lost White to Brighton, but for the amount of money they've spent on just bringing in a player, I think he's on not dissimilar standard to White. So I think he could be one to really watch out for at that heart of that defence. Then there's also talk about Draxler coming in, and if they can get Draxler, I think that could be really interesting side to watch, pushing up for a top 10. Biesler, solid manager. It's a couple more signings, possibly just to bring in a bit more experience into that team. But yeah, very interesting side. And like Matt said, it's great to see Leeds back. They have been missing for far too long, and I want to go watch them at Ellen Road. Only issue is my neighbour is a Leeds fan, and he will not shut up.
Next up, we're moving to Leicester. Interesting off-season for Leicester. I would say last season was a bit underwhelming for them. I think they were, after they won the league, I think they were really expected to push on and establish themselves, as a top 4, top 6 team. But they've struggled to do that, and I think a main reason is their transfers. The only transfer I can remember in recent times for them that's really excited me, at least, is Tielemans, and he's been great for them. But I would say they're just lacking, a little bit of impetus. I think Brendan Rodgers could definitely be doing a little bit more to get them going, and I think the loss of Ben Chilwell this summer is really going to hurt them. He was, solid both defensively and offensively. I think he provided a lot for the team. They brought in a defender like for like replacement in Tim Castagne, but I think you've got to be doing more than that in the off season. I don't think you can keep relying on Jamie Vardy for goals. And for Brendan Rodgers, I thought he would have been a bit more of a wheeler dealer this window, but it seems their transfer business for now at least is done. And I think it's going to be a case of what could have been for Leicester again.
I think it's a massively disappointing transfer window for them. You think last season, final day of the season, and there was still potential for a Champions League spot there, and they missed out just. You would like to think, if you're a fan of Leicester, you'd look at that and want your owners to seize the initiative and go, we've got a really great position here, let's push on and improve on that. But instead they've really just sort of sat still. They've not improved. They've not really done anything, to be honest. I think it's really disappointing from them.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully agree about previous transfer windows, Matt. I think in the past they've done some really good signings. Ndidi came in, Maddison came in. Obviously, they got, like you said, Tielemans. So I actually think they've done quite well in transfer windows in the past, and they've spent okay amounts of money, but not loads. However, I think they've gone backwards. Chilwell, great left back. They had a poor end to the season. It looked so good all the way through. They were playing really well, great football. Obviously, they struggled with some injuries at the end. Maddison going huge one. I think he's their one who gets a play going. He's their attacking force. He gets a game turned from back to front really quickly. And missing out on him with injuries really, really hurt them a lot. And I think they're going to struggle to repeat it this season. They need to keep their key players fit. If Vardy gets injured, if Maddison gets injured, Kasper Schmeichel gets injured, one of the centre-backs gets injured, I think any one of them gets injured and they're going to be struggling, and they're going to be obviously still top 10, but I can't see them pushing on for the top 4 or even the top 6. I think the other teams are strengthened far better. And I think they might be dropping out of that top 6.
Yeah, on top of that, Leicester have to worry about European competition this season. So I think the fact that they've only made one signing and their squad depth isn't great could well end up down the line in a bit of trouble. So worth keeping an eye on that. And next up, we got champions, Liverpool. I think, you look at Liverpool's season last year and you can only praise it. I think that the way they kept their squad so tight-knit, the way they brought in players, the way they managed their team, I think everything about it was just, class. And, they deservedly won the league in the end, and it was an absolute runaway. I don't think I can remember a title challenge quite as convincing as that one. probably won't be repeated anytime soon. And you look at their transfers this summer, and they've only brought in the one player, and you can argue, yeah, they can justify that because they won the league so easily. But for me, it's an interesting transfer window for them. You look around them, and everyone else has strengthened, and they just seem to have not done so. And maybe this is financially, just not viable for them right now in this current pandemic situation. That they just can't spend the money that everyone else is. But you would think, off the title-winning season they had last year, they would have some revenue from that. But it seems they've just spent the 12 million on a Greek left back, or is he a right back? I think he's there to cover Robertson. So yeah, I mean, you look at it and it's quite underwhelming. And you'd think after a title, as convincing title that they won last year, that they would push on and really consolidate and be in for some of the targets that like maybe Chelsea have signed. Like, why aren't they in for Havertz? So yeah, you could argue that it might not get into their team, but their team's very strong already. But for me, it's a little disappointing, and to lose players like Dejan Lovren, who was a very good cover centre back and well loved at the club, I think could well affect the dressing room. So for me, Liverpool, very impressive last season. I'm very, very interested to see how they get on this year.
Yeah, it's interesting that Liverpool have gone for a second season in a row with not signing anyone. Last season they signed just Minamino for money. They got Adrian in. They got Harvey Elliott in from Fulham, the young talented player. But they haven't done anything to really move the club forward. And the Warriors, with some of the other teams like City strengthening as well, you'd say, are they going to hold on to that top spot? I'd say arguably yes, but they are at risk. A little bit like Leicester, they're at risk. A couple of injuries, and I'm not saying they're going to drop out the top four anytime soon. I can't see that happening, but a couple of injuries to key players, and then they might be struggling in that battle against Man City for the winning the title. And if they can get their hands on Thiago, he is a talent, and we want to see him in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure they will bring anyone else in, to be honest. I mean, obviously Thiago's the obvious one that if they can get him in, fantastic for them. I actually saw a really interesting thread on Twitter earlier in the week. I can't remember who it was from, unfortunately, otherwise I'd give them a shout out. But basically summarising Liverpool's financial situation and basically explaining how they have a lot less money to spend on players than some of the other clubs around them, namely obviously City and United, despite winning the Champions League and then the Premier League in consecutive seasons, which obviously brings in a huge amount of revenue. For various reasons, the way their finances work, they just don't have that same sort of liquidity to be able to splash the cash on those big signings. So, it's interesting to see a team sort of in that position of being sort of on top of the world on the pitch, but potentially still having a few issues off the pitch that are going to potentially hamper them from having a real sort of long-term success right at the very top. As you said, Angus, they're not dropping out of the top four at any time soon, but whether they can hold on to and win the league again, I'm not convinced.
Yeah, it's a hell of a feat to retain the Premier League, so good luck to Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. If anyone's going to do it, I guess he's quite a likely candidate. And then their biggest title rivals arguably are next in Manchester City. I think last season for them was just massively underwhelming. They were expected to do big things. They thought it might finally be their year in the Champions League. But again, everything just seemed to crumble around them towards the end of the season. Some really poor results in the league. I saw them drop ground to Liverpool early on. And then, once the Champions League restarted, they just didn't look like the team that we were used to. They got basically destroyed by the third best team in France. So how much blame does that land on Guardiola? How much is it players being, unenthused about the situation? It's difficult to know. But this summer they brought in some good players. I think, again, their transfer windows tend to be pretty solid season on season now. They do tend to bring in good talent for good prices. So you've got Ferran Torres, a midfielder from the Liga, I think Valencia or someone like that. So that's a good signing for them. They lost Sane, obviously, so like for like there. I think the depth they have up, in their attacking ranks now is just unreal. Albeit they have lost David Silva as well. So I think there is a bit to make up there. But I think the players they have in those positions, in Aguero, Sterling, Mahrez, get on, but Silva as well. So they're not really struggling there. And then you've got Nathan Ake at the back, which is probably the biggest signing they've made this summer. And you could argue maybe they've overspent on him. He's a great centre back, always tended to play well for Bournemouth. But every summer now, Man City just tend to buy defenders, and each season it doesn't work out. For me, it's interesting that they aren't amazing transfers. Like, wow, how did they get them? But City are in a real good place this year to kick on. If Liverpool haven't, if they aren't ready to go again, then City will be there to jump on them. So, yeah, I think Guardiola will be fired up for this one.
I mean, Matt, you say Nathan Ake is obviously their biggest signing, but I mean, for me, Scott Carson on loan in goal is just, can't beat that.
Agreed.
But no, in all seriousness, I mean, yeah, last season City really did show sort of their sort of fragility a bit, I guess. But they've, we know the quality that they've got. We know that they can perform at the highest level. And yeah, I just haven't got too much to say on them other than I agree with you. If Liverpool aren't there this season, Man City will 100% be there, and they're always in a prime position to be fighting for the title.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back from a disappointing season for them. Ferran Torres, I watched him play for Spain the other night. Interesting player, talented, loves to run at a player. So quite similar to what they've got in mould for their wingers already. So not a player who's going to come in and change their style of play. But as we know, Pep, he really only has one style of play, and it works, but it is Pep's way, or there's no other way in their team. Nathan Ake at centre back, like you both said, he's a very good centre back. He's a very good Premier League centre back. Is he a Premier League winning centre back? I'm not so sure. I might be proven wrong. We might all be proven wrong on that one. But £41 million for him seems quite a lot. I think it'll be very interesting to watch them how they play.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a wide open title race this season. I think, unlike previous years, any one of 5 teams could win it. So I think City will be there or thereabouts for sure. And on the other side of Manchester, you got United. So I don't know what to make of this transfer window, to be honest. They, started in the summer. They were rumoured to be bringing in Jadon Sancho for sure. That all fell apart when Dortmund put their price way up at 80 million. I don't think United are really capable of paying that unless they're going to pay it in installments, which doesn't seem like a United thing to do. And so they've had to redirect their transfer priorities, and so they've signed Donny van de Beek from Ajax, which I think is a great signing for them. Actually, I think their midfield now is very, very solid. I think when you look at those 3 players that they have in the centre there, Pogba, Fernandes, and also Van der Beek, I think those 3 there could be mainstays for United for a good 3-4 years. So I think that is something they needed to shore up, and now they've done it. Very interesting to see how those 3 get on together. And if they can either get Sancho or Grealish in before the end of the window, doesn't look likely right now, but if they do, then this is going to be a very exciting season for United. We all saw how they ended the last season, how they were just tearing teams apart up front with those players. You got Rashford up there, you got Martial, you got Greenwood, and then you got those 3 in behind. So they probably could do with a defensive signing. I've got some problems back there, and the other big problem they have is in goal. They've got 2 goalkeepers there, probably very equally matched, but who are you going to start with? Whoever you're not going to pick there is going to be a bit upset that they're not playing. So, there are 1 or 2 issues to sort out United, but I think generally they look in a good place for the season.
100% agree on the midfield. Bringing Donny van de Beek in, definitely going to strengthen their midfield. Possibly, on paper, the strongest midfield 3, I'd say, in the league. But my worry is he's another more of an attacking midfielder in the centre mid. And is that going to be 3 players who all play in the same position? Are they going to gel? Are they going to work well? Or is it going to be something like a Frank Lampard, Paul Scholes, Gerrard situation where you've got 3 players who all want to play the same role, get in each other's way, and you get the weakness in the defence? My worry, I think Pogba, I can see Pogba being the player who sits. Played that role for France in the final, and he was brilliant. So I can see that working well. They've got a good young front 3. It'll be very interesting to watch. Defence, when fit, can be quite a strong defence, but I think maybe another centre-back needs to come in. And then in goal, like you say, who do you pick? For me, Henderson. But it's going to be a long season with them 2 battling it out. Feel sorry for Ollie there. That's not going to be easy because it sounds like Henderson won't take anything but the number 1 role. And I can't see De Gea doing anything else apart from being number 1. So they're going to be battling out, and that's 2 egos for him to deal with.
Yeah, I think what you said, Angus, about Pogba sitting deep is spot on. That's exactly how I sort of see it playing out, and I genuinely think that will work really well for them. Pogba is one of those players who can spread the ball around from that position, and sort of his vision for seeing a run further up the pitch and getting the ball to the right place is, I think, pretty much unrivaled in terms of players within the Premier League. He's so talented at that kind of thing, and with him sitting there and then Van der Beek and Bruno Fernandes in front, I think they've got a really good midfield. Their front three is always going to be exciting, whether or not they sign Sancho. And yeah, I just think they're for me, they're sort of dark horses this season to actually potentially challenge for the title, as controversial an opinion as that might be.
It's not the first time I've heard that one. I think many people are tipping them to be there or thereabouts this year, so we will see on that one. A team with probably the most entertaining summer of all time is Newcastle. Was there going to be a takeover? Was there not? Was there going to be one? Was there not? Are they dodgy people? Are we going to let them even take over the team? Everyone's heard the story, but it looks like that one's fallen apart again. Mike Ashley stays in charge of Newcastle. But to be fair to him, this off-season, he's actually provided some decent cash. And he's actually allowed Steve Bruce to sign some good players, in my opinion. I think they're players maybe who fit in well at Newcastle, probably can't go any higher than Newcastle, but they're players who will definitely do bits for them, you know. You look at the two boys from Bournemouth, you got Wilson and Fraser. When they were together at Bournemouth, they were electric, you know, Wilson just banging in everything that Fraser put in the box. And, you know, you look at the other two signings, yeah, they're not exciting. Jeff Hendrick on a free, but, you know, he's going to go straight into their starting lineup. He's a robust midfielder that they're probably missing for a couple of seasons now. So he can partner with John Joe Shelby in the middle. And then you've got Jamal Lewis, who probably didn't get to show just how good he was at Norwich last season. You know, in a relegation battle, it's rare that you come off with a gleaming reputation. So all in all, those four additions are going to be huge for them. And you know, I think Newcastle fans would have been fairly happy of last season. Many were very fearful of relegation under Steve Bruce, but they pulled away and they were very comfortably mid-table last season. So with these additions, I can only see them pushing on. So yeah, I'm fairly optimistic for Newcastle for this season.
At the risk of taking the wrath of the Newcastle fans, I actually don't fully understand the hate towards Mike Ashley in the last few seasons. I can understand for a few seasons they really struggled to get on board with him, but credit where credit's due. Last couple of transfer windows in a row, he has backed the manager. He's brought in this summer. We've got Callum Wilson coming in, proven Premier League striker, will get them goals, and they desperately needed a good striker last season, and I think he's going to be the one, especially if they can keep him fit. Again, like quite a few players we've mentioned, it's the big if, but I can see it working. Jamal Lewis, like you said, Norwich team last season, awful in defence. Who's going to look good in that side? This season, I think he could push on. He runs down, works down those left wings. He really challenges down from left back. Be interesting what Jeff Hendrick in with John Joe Shelby in the middle of the park. Well, yeah, I can see some good things, some good wingers. I think they could be a bit of a dark horse to push into the top 10, maybe even top 8. Very interesting side this season, I think.
Yeah, just a comment on what you said about Mike Ashley there. I have to agree with you. The last two transfer windows, I think he's done what's really asked of him. I think the issue from a Newcastle fan's point of view would be, you know, why did he wait until Benitez was gone before deciding to back the managers when you've got a manager of that talent? Why did he not back him when he had the opportunity? And I think that for Newcastle fans is always going to be a case of what could have been if they'd got the players Benitez wanted and kept him around. They could really have been consistently challenging in the top 10 and pushing for a European spot. Whereas now, definitely, I think they've got a chance of top 10, but they're still a long way off getting anywhere near European football, I think.
Moving on, we got Sheffield United, last season's, you know, surprise team. They started the season amazingly and they managed to carry it through like the whole way through. And they were kind of unlucky to miss out on European football in the end. At the end of the day, they came up with a championship squad and caught a lot of people off by the way they play. And I think by the end of the season, teams were starting to wise up to them. And yeah, I think that's the reason for their slight decline at the end. The off-season for them has seen them make some interesting business. Obviously, the big one for them is that Henderson has gone back to Manchester United. They've lost their number one goalkeeper. But they have signed Aaron Ramsdale, who for me is a future England goalkeeper. I think he is very, very good. And I think, you know, being at Bournemouth kind of helped him have that leadership. He was straight in there at their number one. And I think that really helped him develop as a goalkeeper. And I think he's good business for them for 18 million. I think he's going to be there for a long time. And then you got two players there from Derby, two defenders who were starting for Derby last season for 11 million. And I think for two British young defenders, I think that's really good business. For an already strong defence, adding two players like that is only going to be beneficial for them. I think my only question for me is that they just haven't bought a striker, and I think that was one of the things last season that they really missed. I think they had three strikers at the club in Billy Sharp, Lys Mousset, and also David McGoldrick, who are just not Premier League strikers. They all did well when called upon, but I don't think they'll be able to do that again this season. And if they don't sign a striker, even Premier League caliber, I think they could well struggle with second season syndrome. So more importantly for them than anything else is to bring in a striker who's going to get them goals, because everything else about Sheffield United is very solid. To stay up this year, they'll need to reinforce.
Yeah, I think one of the best bits of business for them, really, from my point of view, is obviously they lost Henderson back to Man United, but bringing in Ramsdale to replace him is it's a great bit of business, really, considering the circumstances they were in. I think he'll do a great job for them, and he'll keep them as a solid team that very rarely sort of ships several goals in a game. They're one of those teams that you never look forward to playing against them, because you know that they're going to be tough and they're going to make it hard for you to create chances. And yeah, he's exactly what they needed, considering they pretty much knew they were going to lose Henderson. Other than that, I don't see that they've really done much to improve in other areas of the pitch, and it would just be interesting to see if they can sort of perform at the same level as they did last season. It's going to be a tough ask, as the Premier League always is. But I think they've got the quality in the squad, really, to at the very least be mid-table. There's no risk of them going down, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, they had a great season. They really did. But like Matt said earlier, I think they were starting to get found out. Obviously, teams do a lot of research, they do a lot of watching of how teams play. They started off the season with a very unique, very different formation, which I think caught a lot of teams off guard. But this season coming, they haven't strengthened their midfield. They've not strengthened their attack. Yes, they play a weird formation, which means by strengthening the defence, they've kind of strengthened their midfield as well. Aaron Ramsdale coming and go, good signing, good replacement for Henderson. Not quite. I don't think he's quite on the level of Henderson, but still top quality Premiership goalkeeper. But I do have worries that they're going to be found out. Maybe not go down, but I think mid to lower Premier League table this season, which is a bit of a shame. Like their manager, Wilder's quality, so I hope to be proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you could be right there. I always just think whenever you've got a solid defensive base to the team, you're very unlikely to be having a terrible season. Just looking at their stats from last season, the only teams that conceded less goals than them were Liverpool, Man City, and Man United. That's a pretty good position to be in as a newly promoted club, to have like the fourth least goals conceded all season. And I think if they can carry that on this year, I really don't see them doing anything less than just being solid mid-table. But I've made more safe-looking predictions than that in the past that have gone horribly wrong. So who knows?
Yeah, totally agree. I think Sheffield United will be safe this year. I think defensively, with stats like that, they're not going to be struggling. Moving on to Southampton, a bit of invested interest here, being the team that I support. Interesting summer for us. I think, you look at the signings we brought in, very good signings in my opinion. I think, Kyle Walker-Peters signing on a permanent deal. He was obviously very, very strong for us the last couple of games. I think once he took over at right back, he, looked like that was his position. Looks like he's going to be irreplaceable there. And then you brought in Mohamed Salisu from Real Valladolid. He's been scouted for a long time. There aren't many left-footed centre-backs in the Premier League, and he's one of them. And you look at some of the things written about him, he just sounds like a really promising signing. I think he's got all the potential in the world. And I think, he's probably going to be off to Liverpool in 3 or 4 years, but, that's just the way things are on the South Coast. So we do need to add a midfielder. I think selling Højbjerg, you could argue is a big deal for us, but I think he is replaceable. I think we'll bring in a centre mid before the end of the transfer window. And you look at our outgoings, and we've managed to shift a lot of deadwood. We've got players who we signed for big transfer fees going either out on loan or being released. So for me, it's been a promising transfer window, but I do think we need maybe 1 or 2 signings just to really push on and hopefully avoid a third successive season of relegation struggle.
I think Salisu, quality signing. I think he could be one for the other teams to be watching out for. I think he might be potentially working his way to being one of the best centre-backs in the league, not this season, but in seasons to come. He looks like he's a big, powerful centre-back, had a lot of interest from big clubs around the world. Obviously, he wanted to come to a club first to develop himself more. I imagine he sees it as a stepping stone. Quite a lot of players do, but I don't mind that too much if we get players in the ilk of Van Dijk who come through. Who knows, we might push on for Europe. Not this season, I don't think. I think it's a bit too far off for us. Yes, we finished the season amazingly last season. But in the back of your mind, you still have worries. Like, I thought we might have started last season quite well and we got off to a mare. Obviously, result which I don't want to talk about. And several others happened. Like you say, Matt, lots of outgoings, lots of players out on loan. I wish we could have sold a few of them, to be perfectly honest. Like Elanusi, I imagine we're still paying parts of his wages. Mario Lemina, I'm certain we're paying at least 50% of his wages. And that's still going to be a strain on our club. And I think this is why we're not able to invest in players as probably as we want us to. Hopefully another centre mid comes in. I think that's where we're really missing out. Like you said, Højbjerg went, but I don't think he's the quality player. I think Spurs are hoping they've signed. I think he was very much an average Premier League player, and hopefully we can get someone a bit more younger, a bit more exciting, playing alongside James Ward-Prowse. They need to be relatively defensive solid, but it's looking up.
Yeah, Angus, you said something to me a while ago when we were having a chat, which I completely agree with, and I think is one of the biggest sort of positives for Southampton, which is that the club did really well last season not to get rid of the manager at the time when it was all going really wrong. And the fact that he's still there and still working with the squad, the improvement was just so visible towards the end of last season. Post lockdown, it was great football, really good, really impressive. And if you can continue that into this season, got a really good chance of a good season.
I can't believe nobody's talked about Danny Ings yet. He had the best season of his life, not even a mention on this podcast. Moving on to Højbjerg's destination from Southampton to Tottenham. What to make of Tottenham? Two signings this season. I guess you can't really say Joe Hart's the signing because I don't think he's going to get much game time. But you got Pierre Højbjerg. They needed a centre mid. They got one. They wanted him for ages. They got him for a good price in the end. He was out of contract, so he's gone there. Probably going to start most games for them, but be interesting to see how he plays under Mourinho team. Much more demanded of him. And then you've got a very exciting signing in Matt Doherty. He's really going to kick on at Spurs. I think he was very, very good for Wolves. Week in, week out, getting assists, very attacking. Whether he'll be ringed in a bit by Mourinho, I'm not sure. But again, I think two good signings. Probably need a striker just in case Harry Kane inevitably gets injured. These are things they need to definitely look out for. And then you got some outs. You got some fairly big outs, you could argue. Jan Vertonghen, a mainstay at Tottenham. He's been in and around the first team for a good 5-6 years now, if not longer. And he's been released. He's off to Benfica. And then you got Kyle Walker-Peters, who he's gone to Southampton. So it's like give and take for Spurs. I think this is a very pivotal season for them. They got Mourinho in on the promise that he would deliver silverware. But to me, I think you need a bit more going on coming in than just Højbjerg and Doherty. So yeah, I think the next couple of weeks will be very important for Spurs, whether they can genuinely challenge for Champions League football, which they weren't anywhere near this season.
Yeah, it's sad to see Vertonghen go, even for someone like me that really doesn't like Spurs very much. It's never good to see sort of someone who has been around the Premier League for so long and has been a real sort of staple of their team and a very impressive player. Shame to see him go. And yeah, Matt Doherty coming in, a fantastic signing for them. I think he's been sensational for Wolves. One of their best players, doesn't always get the headlines, but I think as a player that you want, he plays for most teams in the Premier League easily, I think. So Tottenham getting him for the relatively low price of 15 million in this day and age, I think is a really, really good signing for them. But I have to agree, I don't think they've done enough to really sort of push on from where they were last season. I see it being a very sort of similar season to what they had before. Maybe caveated by the fact that they were affected heavily last season by injuries. If they can keep their players fit, they'll have a much better chance. But I still think it's going to be a struggle for them to really push to the top four again.
Bit of an underwhelming transfer window for my eyes. I think they probably needed to do a bit more. Their team looks weak in a couple of positions. Like you said, if Harry Kane gets injured, really back up. They've got the young Irish lad, I think his name's Parrott. A lot has been said about him, that he's a very talented player coming through, but I haven't seen enough to say if he is going to be good enough to really push push for their team and be there to challenge if Kane gets injured. And I'm not sure if Jose Mourinho has lost that mojo of his. I don't know. Maybe a cup run, but I can't see them. I can't even see them being in the top 6. Maybe not even the top 8. I think they might be the team to go for 9th this season.
Bold statement there. I mean, Mourinho may still be reeling from his dog that died last Christmas. If you haven't been watching his Amazon Prime All or Nothing, then yeah, very entertaining. Right, moving on to West Bromwich Albion. What to say about West Brom? Whenever they've been in the Premier League, I have not enjoyed watching them. So it's difficult for me to be too optimistic for them. I didn't watch too much of them last year, I must admit, but they seem to be pretty steady in the Championship. I think mainly due to the creativity of Grady Diangana, which is their huge bit of business this summer. They've managed to steal him away from West Ham, sorry. And you know, I think that's a massive transfer for both clubs. For West Brom, he's a great addition, proved very, very valuable in the Championship, and I think he can step up to the Premier League. And I think West Ham will massively miss him. I think letting him go for that price is criminal, and a lot of the players have been very, very outspoken about that. You look at the other signings that West Brom have made, they've just consolidated, really. They've just brought in the player they had on loan last year in Mateus Pereira for 8.5 million. Good business again. He was very creative last year. You look at West Brom and they've never been great in the Premier League. They've always been a yo-yo team. But if there was going to be one year where stability could perhaps, you know, overcome them, maybe you might find their feet this year.
On the Diangana, I find it mind-boggling that West Ham have let him go for 20 million. It's from the outrage which has come from the players. The captain going, what are we doing selling this player? Immediately shows that he's a player that the other players rate, and that must mean that he's something special, especially for someone to be so outspoken at the club. And I think Peter might be the man to tell us all about why this is such an outrage.
Yeah, definitely. As a West Ham fan, just absolutely fuming that we've let him go. Not just for me, it's not even about the price. It's just the fact that we've let him go. You know, we've made it clear this summer that we're, you know, not going to be signing anyone, and we'll talk about that more when we move on to West Ham in a second. But for West Brom, a brilliant signing for them. You know, he was running the show for them last season amongst other players, and he's got that real talent that I think we're all going to get the joy of watching in the Premier League this season. That joy will just be slightly less for me, knowing what could have been. But yeah, just on what Matt said, I have to agree as well. I've never enjoyed watching West Brom. Sorry to any West Brom fans listening, but they're just not the team that you look at on the schedule and think, oh, I better watch that game. But yeah, you know, maybe they'll have a good season. Maybe they'll surprise us. They played some good football last season. Bilic has always been a manager who will play attacking football as much as he can. So, you know, we could be in for some really exciting games with them this year.
Definitely. I think Diangana, you know, it just says a lot about West Brom, if anything, because, you know, he could have gone to a much better team than West Brom, I imagine, but he obviously really enjoyed his time out there on loan last year. So good luck to him, and sorry, Peter. Right, on to West Ham then. I mean, I think Peter's probably the best man to kick this one off, but I'll just do a quick summary of their transfer business. Thomas Souček, his loan moves were made permanent, so 15 million, you know, paid on him. I think that's somewhat justified. He came in and had pretty decent impact from what I saw last year in the middle of midfield. I think he gets forward, he's an aerial threat, and definitely picked up some points for West Ham when they really needed them at the end of last year. So yeah, I think West Ham could definitely do with one or two new faces. There's a lot going on behind the scenes at West Ham. I think Peter might be able to shed some light on that, but at the moment, if they don't bring anyone else in, this is going to be a real struggle of a season. You know, that there are some things happening at West Ham right now.
Yeah, I think that's probably an understatement. Some things happening at West Ham right now. It's a mess, to be honest. You'd struggle to find a West Ham fan these days that will do anything other than tell you that the ownership and the board are just an absolute disgrace. They probably wouldn't use words quite as polite as that. The one bit of business that we have done, Souček in for 15 million, I'm delighted with. He was fantastic for us last season when he came in. And yeah, we've done really well to keep hold of him. And I think the price is great, to be honest, for what he brings to the team. We've just spoken about letting Diangana go. I mean, it's just an absolute disgrace. The fact that so many players came out afterwards, Mark Noble, captain of the club, posting a public tweet about how angry he was that the club had let that happen. That's not something you see very often from Premier League professionals who have got all their media training and their publicists, people telling them what to do. they know that that's not the way things are done. So it must have been a really big deal for that to be the reaction that came out of it. I don't think we'll sign anyone else. Obviously, there's talk at the moment of bids in for Tarkowski. Apparently, we've gone back in with another bid for just over 30 million. Burnley want 50 million. In all honesty, in my opinion, he's a good a good defender. He's not worth 50 million to us. That's just an obscene. That would make him our most expensive signing ever, and we don't need to be spending that kind of money on Tarkowski. And realistically, I just can't see us signing anyone else before the end of the window. And yeah, I think we're going to have a really tough season. So that's enough doom and gloom for me. I'll let Angus have a couple of digs at me about West Ham now.
Like Kaiser used to say, I can predict a riot later in the season. I can see your fans blowing their nut as the season goes on. You're going to have a really difficult one, I think. I can't see you signing many role players to come in. Like you said, I can't see you shelling out 50 million. I can't see Burnley taking any less. So I can't see that happening. And it's going to be a long one, I think, for you. I fear for you. I do. Big stadium. Obviously, you haven't spent any money on it, but I think it could be a challenge for you. It could be a big challenge this season, and it'll be interesting to see how you do. Maybe Moyes' first manager to be sacked. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think Moyes is probably more likely to walk than be sacked at this stage. To be honest, I don't think the club can afford to sack him. Well, they probably can afford it, but knowing our owners, they won't want to because they'd have to give him some money for that. So yeah, I think he's probably more likely to have had enough himself and leave.
Right, next and finally, heading up the league, we got Wolves. So interesting summer for Wolves. It started off very quiet. I remember thinking, oh, Wolves not going to sign anyone. But then recently, the last couple of weeks, they've made some big business actually. And the most notable of all is a 35 million club record transfer for Fabio Silva, 21-year-old striker from Portugal, from Porto. I think he's a very exciting signing, and he fits perfectly into the mold that Wolves have got going on right now. Portuguese, young, promising, exciting player. And I think he's either going to be very, very good, or he might take a while to adapt to the Premier League. Both quite likely. So we'll see what happens with him. And then two more signings, and equally Spanish speaking. You've got Marchal, defender, 2 million. I think he's about 30. I think he's like a defender. I think he'll probably try and fill Doherty's gap. Whether he's got it in his legs still will be interesting to see. Maybe it pushes back Traore into defence. Be interesting. But yeah, they've got some noticeable outgoings. I think Morgan Gibbs-White is one of them that I picked out. I thought he was always a player that showed a lot of promise whenever he played for Wolves. Very young midfielder. He's gone on loan to Swansea. And one of the things to notice about Wolves now is that takes their tally up to 10 Portuguese players. So they could almost field an entirely Portuguese 11. And on top of that, it takes them to 16 Spanish-speaking players. So, eventually the whole team's going to be speaking Spanish. They may as well be in the La Liga at this point. So, yeah, very interesting to see the project that they're building there. And I think as for Wolves this season, they'll be looking for Europa League again. And I think with the additions they've made, it's realistic for them. They'll be around that area and possibly higher. I think Fabio Silva is going to be a pivotal signing for them.
The crazy thing is, actually, Fabio Silva is only 18, so to have spent £35 million on him, I think it's a brave one. Obviously, a very talented player, and to have spent that much money, he must be something special. Well, they must think he's going to be something special. Be interesting to see how an 18-year-old from Portugal comes over and adapts to the Premier League. Though we do know big money signing from Portugal before. Young came over, went on to have quite a good career. So hopefully we might see the game with Fabio Silva. He might be the next big thing. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they do. But I think, like you said, definitely going to be up there again. Really strong side. And I love Conor Cody at centre back. I think he's a great defender, and I think they haven't really done much with the defence apart from Doherty. I think he's going to be a big miss. I think he probably should have strengthened at that in his position. But apart from that, good. Yeah, another good window for them.
I think actually a big thing for Wolves this season is going to be the fact they don't have European football to worry about. Last season, I feel they just had such a long season, so many games, such a hectic schedule that really sort of made it difficult for them. I think they played nearly 60 games over the course of last season, which is a lot for any team to be managing. So the fact they don't have to worry about that this season is probably actually a massive bonus for them. Gives them a season to have slightly less fixture congestion, especially with the sort of the more congested fixture season that we're already going to have. I think they've got the possibility to carry on pushing. I think they're almost certain to get Europa League. Don't think they've quite got enough for Champions League yet, but you never know. Leicester did stranger things in the past, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Right, that sums up all the teams and the transfers ahead of the season. Now we're all gonna pick out one player that we think's gonna either be better than last season, or one player to watch out for. So one new transfer to watch out for, and one existing Premier League player who he thinks is gonna kick on the season and do a little bit more than what they did last season. So for me personally, my pick for new addition to look out for is Timo Werner. I think, I spoke earlier about how pivotal I think he's going to be for Chelsea. Proven Champions League, Bundesliga goal scorer. I think he's just guaranteed to get goals. Like, you'd be stupid to not think that. And for a player who I think is going to kick on this season, perhaps really set alight the Premier League, is Anthony Martial. I think, at the end of last season, we really saw just how good he can be in a system that works for him. Under Mourinho, he was hampered, but this front three that United now have just is working wonders for him. So those are my two picks to look out for this season: Timo Werner and Anthony Martial.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Ollie Watkins. Young, exciting, coming up to the Premier League, big signing. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's do. Like, Villa spent a lot on him, and I think if he can get some early goals, get that confidence going, scored a lot last season, and I'll be very excited to watch him bang some goals in this season. And then for the current player, almost a bit of an obvious one, I think. But yeah, I think Phil Foden. I think he's going to really step into David Silva's shoes and push on forward. I think we all know he's a talented player. He's got Pep behind him. He's got players like Kevin De Bruyne around him. Yeah, I think he could really push on and become a leading light both for Man City and hopefully for England.
Yeah, some good picks there from both of you. I think my pick for new addition to watch out for, as much as it pains me to say it, Diangana. I would have loved it if that had been for West Ham, but it's not to be. I think he's going to be great for West Brom, and as I said earlier, I think we can all look forward to watching him. And then I've gone for a slightly sort of out of left field sort of pick for my current player. I've gone with Alan Maximan from Newcastle. I think he showed real glimpses of just really great skill and potential last season. I've gone out on a bit of a limb with this one. He might be awful, but he's one of those players that he's definitely got the spark. And if he starts off well, gets his confidence and keeps going, I think he could be a real exciting player this year.
Yeah, I think you chuck those 6 players into a fantasy team and you think you'll be picking up the points. So nice choices all round by everyone. Moving on to some quick predictions then. Let's go with the league champs and who's getting relegated this season, as well as who's going to claim the Golden Boot. So for me, league champions, I'm going for Manchester City. I think the new additions they've made this summer, and I think they'll just be a lot more hungry this year to start well and really give Liverpool a good run for their money. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, but I think City have got it in them. And to be relegated for me, I've got a bottom 3 of Fulham, unfortunately, followed by Brighton, and then Burnley. Very controversial. Burnley, I think, a lot of evidence would say that they'll probably be fine this year, but to me, they just worry me a bit, and I think their time could be coming to an end in the Premier League. As for Golden Boot, I've got to back up my earlier claim, Timo Werner all round. I just think he's naturally suited for the Premier League, so I really do see him putting many goals in the back of the net. So let's, what have you got, Peter?
Yeah, league champions. I've gone for Chelsea actually. I think we all said earlier they've had a great transfer window. It might not be enough, and obviously City and Liverpool last season were a level above where they were. But we've seen it before with Chelsea. They have a good transfer window and they can fly. So we'll see. I think they'd be a good one to put money on, to be honest. To be relegated, very similar to you, Matt. I've gone with Fulham and Brighton. I'd be pretty certain of those, to be honest. And then the only difference, I've gone for Aston Villa to go down as well. Like I said earlier, they were on the verge of going down last year, and they've really not done much to strengthen this window. I was tempted to put West Ham in there to go down, but I don't want to be that pessimistic going into the new season. And then for Golden Boot, providing he can stay fit, I'm backing England's striker Harry Kane to do the business this year, especially now with Doherty providing assists from that area of the pitch as well. I think he's got a good chance to score lots of goals this year.
So for league champions, I'm going to go with Liverpool. I know it's a bit of a cop out, but
Hey,
fun. But with so many points ahead from last season, I guess it's a long way for the other teams to make up. Obviously, Man City are the next obvious choice, and Chelsea with their signings. But I think maybe just this next season, I think Liverpool could do it again. To be relegated now, I've been rattling through my brain all week. I'm going with, same as you two, with Fulham and Brighton. And I'm sorry, Peter, I think West Ham. I think it's time to go down. I think it's shocking window and shocking owners, and I think could be your time. I'm sorry to say that. And then Golden Boot, another challenging one. Quite a few players could be up there, but I'm going to go with, if he stays fit, Aguero. How about we do surprise team of the year? And I'm going to go with surprise team to shock quite a lot of people. Although we've spoken about them quite a bit. I think I'm going to go with Newcastle. I think Newcastle might be that team to surprise us this season.
yeah, interesting choice. As for a surprise team, I'm going to go. Maybe it's not even that surprising. I'm just going to go with Arsenal. I think they have got it in them this year to get Champions League, and they belong in that fourth spot. Let's be honest, that's where they belong. So if they get fourth, I think you could argue that's a big surprise. So yeah, I'll go Arsenal.
Interesting choice there, Matt. I think you could be right there. They could do really well, actually. My surprise team, I've actually gone for West Brom. They're that team that we've all said earlier. They're not the one you look out for on the TV schedule, but I do think they've got some exciting players. They looked really good in the Championship last year, and if they can keep that going in the Premier League, I think they could surprise a lot of people this year and potentially push for a pretty good finish in the table.
Nice. Yep. I think West Brom are a strong shout for that. I really do think they'll surprise a lot of people this year. Right, let's just do a quick predictions for this weekend's fixtures then. We've got the Premier League kicking off back again on Saturday. And the first game of the game week of the new season sees newly promoted Fulham take on Arsenal at Craven Cottage. For me, I think this is going to be a bit of a baptism of fire for Fulham. I think, they're not going to be used to the attacking firepower that, Premier League clubs have, and especially Arsenal. I think if they're fully firing, which they were in the Community Shield, then I think they could be a force to be reckoned with. So I'm going to, unfortunately, put Arsenal to take this one 3-1, perhaps a couple of Aubameyang goals. That's how I see that one going. How about you, Peter?
Yeah, I can't see anything other than an Arsenal win. I think last time Arsenal played Fulham at Craven Cottage, I think was it 4-5-0, I think. I can't see it being anything other than that again. I think the fact you've got Fulham there to score a goal is probably generous. I think they're going to be so pinned back by Arsenal's attack that they're not going to get many chances.
Yeah, and again, I've got to agree with both of you. I can only see nothing but an Arsenal win. I think 3-0, maybe even 4-0. I think it could be a bit of a drubbing on the first game of the season.
Yeah, not looking good for Fulham early doors. Second game of the game week, we got Crystal Palace entertaining the mighty Southampton at Selhurst Park. So Southampton have a pretty good record at Selhurst Park. So last couple of seasons we've picked up wins. I don't think it's really different this year. I'm really not too scared of Crystal Palace. We might concede one because our defence is a bit leaky, but I'm going to go for a cheeky 2-1 away win.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to match you on that one. I think 2-1, maybe 3-1 Saints. I'm pretty confident coming up against Crystal Palace. Ended the season awfully, so I don't think they've got much about them.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you both and say Southampton to win that one, but Angus tipped West Ham to go down, so I'm going to go for a 3-0 Crystal Palace win on this result.
Cool. No holds barred on that one. Can't see it though. Right, and then game 3, we got the mighty West Ham, or not so mighty, versus Newcastle. This is quite an interesting game for me, at least. I think both these teams struggled last year, in a sense. I think Newcastle have never been too great away from home, but the turmoil going on at West Ham could well carry over into this game, and I do think it will. I think Newcastle are going to be, up and about. I think they'll be quite buoyant over their summer signings, and I think they're going to get the win. I think it'll be close. I think it'll just be a 1-0 away win.
I'm not sure in this game, to be honest. I mean, what history tells us in recent years with this game is there's always lots of goals. There's been several 3-2s, there's been a 2-2, there's been several 3-0s. There's normally quite a lot of goals go flying in.
Great prediction from me then.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually going to back West Ham to win this one. I think I'm hoping they're going to take the anger from what's happened to fire them up. I think they're also going to look at the fixtures that are coming up after this, where we've got a horrific run of fixtures following this game, and they're going to look at this as a must-win game and hopefully go all out and get the 3 points so that we can at least not be on 0 points after 7 matches, which will be nice.
I'm going to go for a score draw. I think 1-1. I think Newcastle, I think they will build into the season. They'll get stronger as it goes along. But I think too soon for their new players to gel. I'm not sure they'll be quite ready for all their players to fit in as they would have hoped.
Nice. Okay, interesting predictions there. And probably the standout game from match week 1 is champions Liverpool versus newly promoted Leeds. Interesting fixture for quite a lot of reasons. Probably haven't played each other for quite a while now, and I think Leeds will be well ready for this game. This is what they've been waiting for, to get back in the Premier League. They'll be itching to show people just how good they are, and Liverpool will have to be on it to reaffirm their quality. I think I do think Liverpool will get the win. I think you'd be somewhat naive to be suggesting that Leeds can pick something up at Anfield, but I do think it will be a couple of goals in this game, and I do think Leeds will get on the score sheet. So I'm just going to go for a narrow 2-1 win for Liverpool. I think first day of the season, I think it could be a bit edgy. So yeah, I'll go for Liverpool to nick it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think 2-1 to Liverpool. I can definitely see Leeds giving them a good go, but we just know Liverpool at Anfield in the Premier League is that's a challenge, and for a newly promoted team, that's a really tough one. So yeah, 2-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, I see Leeds coming out the gates really, really hard, really quick. Probably getting a relatively early goal, about 15 minutes into the game, going 1-0 up. Then I think Liverpool's class will show, and I think 3-1 Liverpool. I'm saying a few late goals later in the game, 60 minutes onwards, but I think 3-1 Liverpool.
And then on Sunday, we've got 2 games. So one of them is West Brom versus Leicester. Very exciting fixture. I'm sure Peter's pumped for this one. West Brom, Leicester. For me, I actually think West Brom might get off to a winning start. I really do. I think their business in the summer has been pretty good, and returning to their Premier League against the Leicester side, who probably aren't going to be as up for it. I'm actually going to go for a big one. I'm going to go for a 3-0 West Brom win, and that is putting it out there.
That is a bold prediction, but I think you could be right. West Brom are going to be up for it. Leicester should be up for it, but we'll see. I think West Brom could win that, and it could be a very good start for them. Taking sort of a fairly biggish scalp early on could give them a lot of confidence going into their next few fixtures.
I can only see this game being a bit of a bore draw. I think I'm going to go for 0-0. I think West Brom are going to come up. They're going to want to be defensively solid to start the season. I think they're going to not want to concede. They're going to try and get a point at home. Against Leicester, though, yes, they finished the season not as well as they would not wanted to, but they did come 5th. They got a lot of attacking prowess. I think West Brom might go, let's hold back, get a point, get a good off to a relatively solid start, and see how the season kicks on from there.
All right, and then next up we got Tottenham versus Everton. Again, quite an evenly matched contest, in my opinion. I think both teams will be fighting for the similar spots in the league this year. Tottenham being at home is a bit of an advantage. I can see this being a draw, though. I think a 1-1 draw, maybe Harry Kane getting his campaign for the Golden Boot underway with a goal. And then, you look at the talent that Everton have brought in over the summer, maybe one of their new boys can get on the score sheet. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting game to see sort of how these two teams look going into the rest of the season. They're both sort of, as you said, Matt, they're both players, both teams that are going to be fighting for similar positions. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go with a Tottenham win. I think they've probably got just that little bit extra quality, but Everton, I think will push them. I don't think it's going to be a big win, maybe 1-0.
And now I'm going to go the complete opposite to you. Peter. I'm going to go with an Everton win. I think they're going to be buoyed by the good summer transfer window they've had. Players coming in like James Rodriguez. Ancelotti's had a bit of time, and not as much time as he would have wanted, but a bit of time with the players. Quality manager, and I'm going to go with 2-1 Everton.
Interesting predictions all round there. Next up, we got Brighton versus Chelsea on Monday night. For me, this has only got one result written over it. I mean, yeah, Brighton are at home, but last season I can remember Chelsea putting quite a few past Brighton, or was that a different game? That might be the season before. But either way, I think with these new signings that Chelsea have, they might not all start this game, but I imagine Werner will, and I imagine Havertz will. So I think those two combined, it spells danger for Brighton. I think it's not going to be as heavy defeat as people might predict. I'm just going to go for a 2-0 away win for Chelsea.
I reckon Chelsea to win 3-0. I think Timo Werner to get off to a cracking start, really take the Premiership by the scruff of his neck. Two goals for him, and one of the other players in the team popping up with another, and I think 3-0.
I'm going to stick another 2 goals on there and say 5-0 Chelsea. I've got Brighton down to be relegated. I just can't see them getting anything, and I think it could be a really big start for Chelsea. I know 5-0 is a bit of a wild prediction, but stranger things have happened.
Brutal for Brighton there. See if that one turns out. And then lastly, because we've got obviously only 8 fixtures this game week, we've got Sheffield United versus Wolves. Interesting game. I think at the end of last season, Sheffield United got the better of Wolves. For me, I think this is going to be a draw. I would like to see Wolves win, but for me, I think Sheffield United will be up for it. They're much better at home than they are away. And yeah, I'm just going to go. Actually, I'll go with a big draw. I'll go with a 2-2 draw.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the draw as well for this game. It's got a draw written all over it for me. I'm going with 1-1. Yeah, I just don't think it's going to be a great game, to be honest.
And sadly, I'm not going to break the mould either, so I see another draw. I think 1-1. I can see that as well, Peter.
Might be the first time we ever agree on anything, but yeah, so that brings an end to it. A big thank you to everyone that's tuned in for this episode of the 3PL podcast, hopefully the first of many. We'll be back next week for a summary of all the action from week 1. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at 3PL podcast or on YouTube using the same name. We'll catch you same time next week.